Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing this digital wallet situation yet again. I have to be honest with you, I kind of feel like I've kind of wandered into sort of a quagmire here, if you will, as regards this whole issue, but it is something I find is extremely important, and I don't think people are seeing all the long-term legal ramifications that could result from this notion of so-called digital money. I initially thought of making this video entitling it, "Can we just stop calling it money?" And I'll get into that analysis here in a moment, because by all accounts of how this thing is supposed to play out, I don't know how you call this money. In any sense of the word, colloquial, professional, legal, or otherwise, up to this point in time in human history. I don't see how you call it that. But that said, let's get into the analysis. I'm trying to be as non-snarky as I possibly can in making these videos, because this is serious stuff. And as I've discussed in other videos, this new government's their desire to help people is laudable. I have to give credit where credit is due on that. But again, this is something that I think is very much a Trojan horse, that if you don't understand what it is at the outset, it can cause, I think, tremendous problems for Thailand long term. That said, let me get into it. Thought of making this video initially, and I've got a whole lot of citations I'm going to do on this one. Thought of making this video initially after reading a recent article from Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, "Government Hits Back at Cash Scheme Slurs." So, quoting directly from one site within this, and I'm going to cite multiple sources, I'm going to kind of tie it all up and do a final analysis here. Quoting directly, "The government said it would seek to pass a bill allowing it to borrow 500 billion baht to fund the scheme. However, Ms. Sirikanya, and that would be Sirikanya Tanasakun, who is a MFP deputy leader, so part of the so-called opposition, which that whole word is a little bit loaded at the moment. Leaving that aside, though, quoting again, let's just quote again. "The government said it would seek to pass a bill allowing it to borrow 500 billion baht to fund the scheme. However, Ms. Sirikanya said that she thought the authorities would find the bill unconstitutional and contrary to financial and budgetary discipline law." Now, a couple of things in there, and I urge those who are watching this video, go check out all of these citations. Read it for yourself if you're interested in this, because a lot of information in there. As they get into, it's really kind of fascinating, the legal argument against this on the notion that there's no urgency. Urgency seems to be something that gets into this. Also, again, this whole issue of, is it money? What is it? Again, seems to be kind of percolating to the surface. Quoting further, "As for concerns over financial and budgetary discipline, the government isn't working alone on this project, with the National Economic and Social Development Council and the Bank of Thailand supervising it. Various views were taken into account when the government revised its project before details were announced on Friday." Quoting further, political activist Sri Swan Janya, meanwhile, vowed to petition the ombudsman to seek a ruling by the Constitutional Court on whether the government's plan to pass a borrowing bill to fund the handout scheme is constitutional and in line with budgetary discipline or not. So, okay, there's that side of it. Now, moving over again, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, "Puathai Reaffirms Digital Wallet Scheme Will Go Ahead." Quoting directly, "The 10,000 baht digital money project is equivalent to, quote, resuscitation of the economy." So resuscitation is in quotes. "It will literally create a, quote unquote, storm of economic stimulation," she said, and she being Trichada Sritada, a deputy Puathai spokeswoman. Quote, "Consumers will have more buying power while businesses will have better liquidity. More jobs will consequently be created, and the economy that has been stagnant for years will recover and stabilize again." Well, you know, I fail to see how that can happen where the money isn't actually liquid, which we'll get into in a moment. So they say liquidity, and where you're creating money out of thin air without concomitant goods and services being created along with that currency, then inflation is just baked into that. So you're creating something without underlying value associated or attached with it. I fail to see where the stimulation comes from. And as we discussed, and we'll get into again, all of these folks have to be in the tax system, and it's money they can't use on just anything, nor can they use it just anywhere. As a result, A, it calls into question how that can be money, and B, all it really is, at the end of the day, it's a digital ledger system allowing for barter effectively between, or exchange of goods between people that then imposes a tax. It creates, so when they say stimulus, I find that a bit of a disingenuous term. Yes, it will stimulate people walking in to certain places and saying, I want to take this good home with me in exchange for these digital credits, but the digital credits are made from nothing and not backed by anything, so there's no actual value exchanged, and meanwhile, it can only be used on certain goods and services and only within the tax system. So our country's going into further debt to go ahead and create fake money that's then only used to create transactions that can then be taxed. Doesn't seem like a real win-win scheme to me. So, okay, now quoting further from another article, again from Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. A lot of great insight on this in the Bangkok Post. Bangkok Post doing a heck of a good job staying on top of this particular story. And hats off to those folks over there. Tip of the hat to you guys. Those who are watching these videos, go check out these articles in detail because there's way more in there. I'm just kind of skimming the surface on a lot of this. Again, quoting directly from a recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Saretta clarifies conditions and funding sources, says 50 million people will be eligible for 10,000 baht handout. Quoting directly, under the program, 10,000 baht in digital money will be transferred into a digital wallet on the Paotang mobile app, which is already used by millions of people. The transfers will begin in May, 3 months later than previously planned. The money, okay, now this is where the rubber hits the road, okay? The money must be spent within 6 months in the district where the recipient's home is registered. So there's a geographic restriction and there's a timing restriction. This is money that expires. Quoting further, it cannot be transferred to other people or converted into cash. How is that money? Quoting further, the handout can be used to buy food and consumer goods only. It cannot be used to buy goods online, cigarettes or liquor, cash vouchers, and such valuables as diamonds, gems, or gold, and cannot be, and this, it gets even like, and cannot be used to pay off debts or pay for water or electricity bills, fuel, natural gas, or tuition fees. As noted in the title, is this a digital wallet or a leash? I mean, how is this money? You know, and again, as I've said in another video, I find this whole thing antithetical to being Thai. The notion of just being a free person, a Thai. You know, I mean, Thailand was the bulwark in Asia against, especially Southeast Asia, against communism. This is the kind of stuff communists do. You know, I don't know how to put that any other way. Let me read this again. To not put too fine a point on it, the handout can only be used to buy food and consumer goods only. It cannot be used to buy goods online, cigarettes or liquor, cash vouchers, and such valuables as diamonds, gems, or gold, and cannot be used to pay off debts or pay for water, electricity bills, fuel, natural gas, or tuition fees. So basically, you can use your digital money to go buy chicken and chiclets, because I don't know what else, you know, what's not covered in the restricted side of this. Quoting further, shops are required to register to join the program, and they must be in the tax system. Again, you know, I find it laudable what this government's trying to do. I truly, truly do. And it's been a long time since we've seen or heard these kind of voices and had these kinds of discussions. That said, this thing scares me. If it's not clear from these videos, I worry greatly about Thai people and Thailand should a scheme like this come about, and should people become sort of, indoctrinated to the notion that this is actual money, that worries me greatly more than anything. Again, it can expire. It can have a proximity where you can use it. It can have parameters on which you can buy. How is that money in any sense of the term that we know of it in the free world? Now, finally, quoting from a different source, I'm going to go over here to Zero Hedge, who's actually quoting the Epoch Times in an article titled, Aussie Telco Blackout Chaos Proves Cash Still Remains King. Here's another side to this whole thing. If we get really used to dealing with digital money and we have no analog option, which is pretty easy to do from what we've seen in certain other countries, Australia being one of them, where people become kind of complacent and they just get used to using a system and they stop really worrying about it. Well, and then they end up having no other option. Quoting directly, the Optus blackout proves that a small glitch in the system can cause total mayhem in a cashless society. Quoting further, modern technology is a wonderful thing until it isn't. In short, the mayhem, frustration, and missed opportunities piled up in all quarters. Quoting further, it's a timely reminder to us all that carrying cash may be a sensible thing to do for occasions such as that experienced on November 18th. And I urge those watching this video, go check out that article in detail and see how this all went down. Basically, one minor glitch within this whole system resulted in essentially people not being able to transact in their economy at all for a prolonged period of time. Quoting further, the removal of cash from the economy will give unprecedented power to the banking institutions as they will be able to control all transactions other than bartering. I would even go so far as to say that the system that's being talked about, at least in theory for here in Thailand, is actually the worst of both worlds, because what it effectively does is tracks bartering and then taxes it more, because that's what's occurring in the transaction between those using it in these places that can actually sell goods for this money. Can't even call it that, but we'll use it for the sake of argument. Again, it's basically like even a step even further in certain ways. Quoting further, the Royal Commission into the Australian banking sector exposed the power exercise and the moral free zone it became as profits were pursued in an ethics-free environment. Yeah, they get into a whole analysis in that article about how as people went more and more cashless, they stopped really seeing what things cost, and they stopped seeing the little hidden fees that were just kind of digitally added in there. Again, another one of these sort of unintended long-term consequences I don't see anybody talking about in this context. Finally, quote, it is doubtful that with even more market power, there would be a commensurate enhancement of moral and ethical standards. Yeah. You know, look, at the end of the day, if people can make more money with virtually no consequences, they're probably going to try to do that. And if they're running a cashless system where they can basically say whether or not your money's any good, that they can turn it on and off, they can tell you what you can buy and sell with it, you know, they can tell you how long it's good for, it has an expiration date. None of these are good things. None of these are particularly good things. Now, I can see arguments on one-off basis. Okay, we want to hand out money, but we don't want people all running down and spending it on cigarettes and alcohol. Yeah, I get that. That said, if that's your real problem, don't hand out the money. Let people just work and earn and use whatever products they feel like doing or using. But long story short, I just view this as something, again, I don't view this politically. I don't care who brought this up, quite honestly. It's the fact that it's really, really dystopian when you look at how this can be applied on a long-term basis. So I'm very, very hopeful, quite honestly, we come up with something else, some other idea other than this, because, again, to my mind, this just looks like a Trojan horse.